Welcome to the Unshackled Life Podcast. Real talk about faith, freedom, and following Jesus. I'm Dalen Woodard, and I'm glad you're here. Whether you've been walking with Jesus for years or you're just trying to figure out what's real in a noisy world, this space is for honest conversation, raw reflection, and truth that sets us free. Let's get into today's episode. During my morning devotions, I came across, or it was said, something to the effect that trouble doesn't indicate the promises of God are ineffective, invalid, or have failed. And it seems like common sense, and yet it goes against everything I think we instinctively think or feel. At least I have a tendency to, wait a minute, don't the promises of God promise blessing, life, deliverance, refuge, safety, things like that? That doesn't sound like trouble, right? And it doesn't. And so that's where our mind goes. If there's trouble, if there's difficulty, then God might not be with me. That's good. Sometimes we get worse and we go, God isn't with me. God is mad at me. God hates me. And there are times when trouble is God putting a difficulty in front of us and going, stop long enough to look around. Pay attention. You know, Balaam's donkey stopped, wouldn't go forward. That was a difficulty, and it saved his life. Sometimes they are that. And sometimes ease does indicate that God is moving and doing something. Jericho. You shout, and walls wide enough to drive a chariot on fall down. That's blessing. That's God fighting for you. Gideon broke some pots. That's it. He held a torch. So sometimes it is that. But sometimes deliverance doesn't look anything like we think it should. Joseph was delivered from his brothers with over a decade in prison. David was delivered from Saul by spending a lot of time running around, hiding in caves, and camping out with the enemy. Living with the Philistines. 15% of the New Testament was written from either prison or exile. Shipwrecks, beatings. The greatest promise of all, the greatest promise of deliverance. The promise that is the pinnacle of all promises that fixes everything meant Jesus had to get up from the garden after asking for help and endure rejection and mocking and beating. They beat him until he was barely recognizable as a human being, much less as Jesus. Then they crucified him, and he died. See, because sometimes death is deliverance. Actually, every time. Death is deliverance. Or I guess I should say it, deliverance requires death. Jesus said, You have to deny self and follow me. We have to deny self and submit to God and follow him. Deny self and say, yes, God really did say. So no, I'm not going to try another way. And denying self feels like death. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. And it's scary. Because it requires trust. Trust that God really is going to do what he said he was going to do. And sometimes that's hard when you're in the garden. Sometimes that's hard when the people are turning away, when you're being accused of things that aren't true, or reminded of things that are, that have been forgiven. Sometimes it's hard when people are taking their shots and you feel like you're being beat up and kicked while you're down. When the system seems stacked against you and you can't get a fair break to save your life. Jesus understands. He had 3 false trials. 3. Sometimes it's hard when you're on your cross. And yes, Jesus took our place, but we're going to have our cross. He told us, take up your cross. Sometimes deliverance is more difficult than we think it should be. Sometimes refuge is less comfortable than we would like. Sometimes safety still feels scary and doesn't feel safe. But that doesn't change who he is. And that doesn't change what he said. And that doesn't change his faithfulness. Jesus died on that cross. But he did not fail to be delivered. Because God has raised him from the grave. And he is alive. So whatever you're in the middle of, if you belong to him, if you have put your trust in him, if you are one of his adopted children, sealed by his Spirit, then whatever difficulty you're in the middle of, whatever healing hasn't come, even if it doesn't come on this side of eternity, whatever door hasn't been opened, whatever chain hasn't been broken yet, whatever pain hasn't been relieved, whatever fear is still looming, he is good, he is God, and victory is won. The fulfillment will be seen. So trust it. Don't look at trouble as an indicator of whether or not you have God's favor. If you want to know, is God with me? Is God for me? Do I have his favor? Look at Jesus on that cross. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Unshackled Life podcast. If it encouraged, blessed, or challenged you, consider following the podcast and sharing it with someone you feel it might bless or help. Be blessed, and remember, when you fix your thoughts on God and build your thinking on the foundation of his truth, God fixes your thoughts.